Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacqueline. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacqueline at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, USA Global TV and radio watchers and listeners. I am Mariska du Preez here all the way from New Zealand, bringing you today's Talking Heads. And we are in our fifth lesson of this series. We are discovering teamwork and how to build high-functioning and trusting teams. So for today's lesson, what we're going to be looking at is accountability and taking accountability and cultivating a bit of accountability within our teams. So without further ado, let's jump into today's lesson. So before we jump into the accountability part of things, what I want us to think about a little bit is a finding that the researchers Duffy et al. Found within their research. So one of the research subjects, the team member wrote that projects often assume people know how to work in teams. Isn't that so true? We assume people need to know how to work in teams, but we don't get taught. In fact, it is a skill set that requires just as much training and guidance as any other tool. If a person functions in a positive team, there is a great satisfaction achieved. However, tools alone and objectives will not prepare people for basics on how to function as a team. And that is one of the reasons why we are looking at teamwork. So within the engineering space, and this is a place where I came from, I've experienced this a lot of times. People don't necessarily understand how to work and function properly in teams. Individually, yes, that's easy. And then when you go even larger, because you're in an organization with multiple teams, it becomes even more difficult when you have cross functions where you need to function within. So understanding this teamwork thing is really, really important. So what we found so far in our teamwork journey is that building trust is the foundation. Then having healthy conflict is a really key way for us to be able to communicate and work out all those differences that might occur during our teamwork process. Then, of course, cultivating communication and commitment so that we have commitment for what it is that we're doing. And today we are looking at taking accountability. So I do want us to remember that teamwork, no matter what team you are in, teamwork equals courage plus persistence. So even if we are in a team where maybe things aren't functioning the way it's supposed to, or it's not a great team, we can make a difference. We can make a difference by taking the courage to step up and being persistent. Continuously working on it will make a difference. So, for accountability, what is it that we're looking at? Now, accountability is one of those phrases within the corporate space that has been beaten quite a bit. So, Leccioni's definition, I think also the definition that we will be working with today around accountability is The willingness of team members to remind one another when they are not living up to the performance standards of the group. So it's not only taking accountability and putting my hand up, it is also looking after the rest of us and making sure that it is spread equally, so to speak. So what does it consist of? So we broke it down into two main areas. The one is the outcomes or the results that we're looking at. Those ones can be quite easy. And then the other ones are behaviors. So when we think about outcomes or results, it looks more or less like a dartboard, where we have a dart, we throw it and we know exactly where it landed. We can see whether it hit the bullseye or it didn't. So outcomes and results are fairly easy to understand whether we hit the mark or we didn't hit the mark. However, behavior can be a bit of a different story. As you can see on this little video, my cat decided to ride around on the wee little vacuum, and the other one wasn't too impressed. Now, this is what might happen within our teams as well, where some of the team members, the behavior that we are exhibiting is not really conducive to what the rest of the team might be expecting. So let's start with outcomes first, seeing as that is the more straightforward type topic. So with outcomes, the things that we normally look at is stuff like our KPIs. This is our key performance indicators. So these things are things that's measurable. It might be tasks that we complete. It might be specific timelines that we're working on. There might be budgets that we are working within. So it is something with a very specific, tangible outcome or result to it. So within the outcomes, things to take into consideration is that it needs to be measurable. So when we set up goals for ourselves, a lot of us has heard about SMART goals. So specific is the start of SMART goals, and measurable is also in there. So it needs to be specific and measurable. It needs to be attainable, realistic, and time-based. So as you can see, the outcomes and results, there's measurability in it, specific requirements, your time, your quality, your costs, thinking about the parameters in which you are working. And then, of course, it needs to be agreed upon within our team. And that is what our previous lesson looked at, was that agreement and the commitment from the team. So this then is outcomes, and outcomes feels fairly familiar for most of us. We are quite familiar with it. Either we've had some form of it in school, understanding what the requirements are for exams, or maybe any athletics that we competed in, understanding what times or heights or distances we needed to complete. So outcomes and results is really something that's so easy to measure. And because it is so easy to measure, most people stop here. Because, I've got it measured. I know exactly what I need to do. So I'm not too worried about the rest of it. The thing is, if we don't worry about the next part, it will definitely have a tendency to bite us. And that's what we want to prevent. So taking accountability, I can take accountability if I know my measurements, but I also need to have the correct behaviors in order to support the rest of the team. Otherwise, it might all just fall apart. So behavior is a mirror in which everyone shows their image. And that's the thing about behaviors. Normally, it is linked to some form of ideology or a belief system or a way of thinking that we have. And because we think of it in a specific way, we behave in a specific way. And this might be thinking that we are aware of, or it might be thinking that we're not aware of. So understanding that sometimes we might show behaviors that we don't even realize we are showing. So this is why it's very important for the rest of our team to also make us attend to any behaviors that might be showing up that isn't quite in line with helping us or the rest of our team. So how does this look like then? The two questions I think is most of value for us when thinking about behavior is what behavior are supporting the team and what behavior creates friction within the team. So thinking about these two elements, and of course, when we talk about behaviors with another team member, focus on one. Having a whole list of this is the stuff that we don't do well is not helpful because we cannot focus on the whole list. We can, however, focus on one behavior, something that we're doing that's not helping the team, as well as one behavior, something that we are doing that is helping and supporting the team. So understanding these elements is really helpful. It also helps us in our journey of growth because it's easy to concentrate on these two different elements and make the one more and the other one less until they are at an acceptable level and then moving to the next thing that we need to learn. So, when we think about behaviors, what might be some of the things that we need to notice, right, within our team's behavior? So elements of behavior that can crop up and make it really tricky for teams are things like respect. Now, I'll go through each one of these in a little bit more detail, but let's have an overview first. So respect is the first one. Then sharing and fair workload. So not only the sharing of the workload, but also having it be fair. Then giving credit where credit is due, and keeping ourselves and others to the same standards. So let's look at respect. For respect, now, if I don't respect my team members and my team members do not respect me, we have a problem. So firstly, remember the trust bar at the bottom of our little triangle. It's definitely going to show up there, right? So if there's no respect, no mutual respect for the other person as a human being, for the skills that they bring to the team, then we certainly have a problem. So when we think about respect, the way to help us bring this to our team is one, leading by example. Now, for all of these things, remember it takes courage and persistence. And leading by example is vital within our team space. And when we are the leader, even more so. Whether we want to hear it or not, as a leader, we are always being looked at. We are being looked at for cues to see what the other members of the team should or should not be doing. Now, if we don't respect the other members in the team and we don't show respect to the other members, then the likelihood of the rest of our team showing respect is decreasing on a daily basis. So, as the leader, we need to be able to lead by example. Now it's not only the leader, it's also the team members. So if we are a team member, we also need to lead by example, because our fellow team members will also come with us if that is the standard that we set. Then also, especially for the leaders, addressing missteps immediately. If we see that there is some disrespect that's taking place, addressing it as soon as we are aware of it. The sooner we cut it out, the better. It is like cancer. It will grow and grow and infect the whole team. So we don't want that to happen, and we want to take it out the sooner, the better. So that's respect. The next one is sharing and fair workload. Now, what I really want you to think about here is if we have 10 tasks and 5 team members, it's the same as the outcomes, right? The easy way to do this is to go, okay, so we have 5 team members, we have 10 tasks, 2 per member. That would make it shared, right? It's equally shared. The thing is, some of these tasks might take a longer time to complete, or it might be more energy or time heavy than others. Now, if I give 2 time and energy heavy tasks to one team member, and to another team member, I give them 2 really easy tasks so they can knock it out in an hour, that's not necessarily fair workload distribution. Now, it might be that in my team, I have a specialist. They're the only person that can draw up this report, right? No one else can draw it up. They're the only one that really understands it, and they're the one that needs to draw it up. So I can't really give the task to anyone else except for them. The thing is, if we understand that this task is going to take a lot of time and mental energy to get it done, it might be that there is support that we can give to our team member. So say, for instance, they have a presentation that they need to set up, and I know that there's a lot of information that needs to be gathered, and then the information needs to be distilled, and then only it can go into the presentation. I can get some of my other team members to help with the gathering of the information and possibly with some of the distilling before it goes into the presentation. And by doing that, it means that the person that's going to be responsible for the presentation doesn't need to go out and gather the information. So there is more of a fairness within that workload. So not only looking at the sharing of the workload, but being fair in the way that we distribute our workload. So as we mentioned on the slide is the allocating of our tasks fairly. And then, of course, noticing if there is anybody in the team that might not have the right amount of workload and reallocating, redistributing, or seeing how we can support. Then, of course, there's also the performance element of this. So looking at the workload, it's very easy to go to our outcomes or our results because, well, you have this task. Is it finished? Is it not finished? Was it to the quality that we required? Now, poor performance in this regard also needs to be addressed. And understanding what happened for there to be this poor performance. Was it something that maybe the person didn't know how to do? Were they overwhelmed with other tasks on their plate? Did we have a form of job degradation? So they're doing stuff that isn't really in their scope, but they're helping out and not getting to their own tasks. So seeing where this performance problem came in. So that is on sharing and fair workload. Then the next element for our behavior is giving credit where credit is due. Now, my dad used to say, do not plow with somebody else's calves. I know it doesn't quite translate well in English. It works a little bit better in Afrikaans. And that was a very loose translation. So giving credit where credit is due. Again, this is a lot about leading by example, especially when we are a leader, making sure that we give the right credit to the right team members. And if we are a team member and either we receive credit that is not ours, to rectify it and let the team know, hey, wasn't me that did it, it was Susan that actually did this task and she deserves the credit, not me. And of course, then this comes into the stepping in. So when we give and receive credit, I mean, it's always nice to get a thank you or a well done or a pat on the back for whatever it is that we did. It feels so much better if we actually did it. So making sure that that is shared within the team and celebrating those things that we have achieved. So making sure that we have those little celebrations. And it doesn't always need to be an outcome type of celebration. So when we think of something like, for instance, marketing, we might have a whole campaign and we've set everything up and we expected a certain result from it, but we didn't quite get there. We can still celebrate the overall campaign completion. So there's still elements, the consistency that we have established, the new good behaviors and habits that we are establishing that will give us results later on. So that also needs to be celebrated, and not only the outcomes or the results of what it is that we were working on. So taking those things into consideration when we give credit. And then, of course, the very last one, which is keeping ourselves and others to the same standards. And here, I'm always reminded of the book Animal Farm. Now, I listened to it on radio when I was little, and I remember loving to go and listen to Animal Farm. And I always found it so interesting that some animals were more equal than others. Now, we don't want to have this in our teams. We want all our animals to have the same equality, including the leader, right? So whatever standard it is that we have set, that standard is for everyone. So that goes back to being fair. And having that standard for everyone, it also makes it a lot easier for all of the team members to have peer accountability. So now we can keep each other accountable. We can keep team members accountable. We can keep our team leader accountable because we are all working on that same standard. And this is really important because there's a lot of times when we don't necessarily do this. Some teams or some people within a team might be seen as in a different league or in a different area. And as soon as we do that, we create segregation within our team because now our standards are not equal anymore. And as soon as we start having segregation, we do not have a team because a team is people coming together, not driven apart. So taking this into consideration, it is one of those encompassing sort of principles within our team. And now you can see why behavior, when we look at accountability, is so important. Now, having these behavior conversations can be tricky. And I remember the very first time I had to have one of these behavior conversations. My heart was beating, my hands were sweating. I actually went out of the office and I paced in the parking lot so I can gather enough courage to have this conversation. And to this day, I still think there's things that I could have said differently. It is behind me now, however. So there's always things that we can do better. It's good to think through them before having the conversation. And we need to have it. If we don't have the conversation, nothing will change. And in addition, if we don't have the conversation, the person might not even know that their behavior is negatively impacting the team in such a way that there is going to be strife for everyone. So this is really important to address, although it might not feel like something that we want to jump into and just get done. This is why we had our previous, 2 lessons back, on healthy conflict, right? Being able to have these conversations and around behavior is good. It's not the person, it is the way that they behave. And this is always something we can change and alter. So before we close our lesson for today, the 2 questions I want us to think about within our accountability and whether our team is taking the accountability that they're supposed to. Is your team accountable to you and to each other, right? So looking at the overall accountability of the team. And then, what do you need to focus on? Do you have clear outcomes and results? If we don't have that element, yes, it's an easy element to get. If it's lacking, if it is not there, we will run into trouble with our team. Because now we are rowing a boat and we're going in circles all the time. We need to know which direction we're going. We need to know what outcomes we are working towards, because we're working towards something. If we don't have that, we definitely need to get that. And this includes the standards that we have for our team. Because if we don't know what standards we are working towards, how do we uphold them, right? So these elements, even within the behavior section, we need to take them into consideration when we're looking at the outcomes and the results that we want. Then, of course, our behaviors, everybody behaving the way that they're supposed to. Is it helping the team? Is it not helping the team? What's happening? And have we identified that one thing that maybe they can change, tweak a little bit, so it can become something that would support the team? Or that one thing that they're doing really great and we want more of? So looking at that, or it might be both. It might be that we have a combination of the 2 that would help us to be more accountable. And with that, that's the end of our lesson for today. If you would like to get into contact with me, you can do so via my email, which is mariska@journey2discover.com, or alternatively, you can visit my website, which is journey2discover.com, or connect with me via LinkedIn. I would love to have a conversation. And that is the end for today. Enjoy the rest of your time, and until next week, Mariska out.